When you walk into a grocery store to buy something like a gallon of milk, the price is just, well, it's just the price.
Right.
It's printed right there on the shelf. You don't hand the cashier your credit card and suddenly find out, I don't know, the milk is $40 instead of $4.
No, of course not. You just walk out.
Exactly. You don't have to negotiate for dairy.
Yeah.
But then you walk to the back of that very same store, right? You step up to the pharmacy counter.
And that's where things get weird.
Yeah, that fixed reality completely evaporates. The rules change entirely. So the source material we are taking a deep dive into today, it's a guide called Navigating the Prescription Pricing Trap. And it exposes exactly how this happens.
It really breaks down the hidden mechanics of prescription drug pricing.
Right, with the ultimate goal of making sure you, the listener, never overpay again.
Because, honestly, it's an industry that completely thrives on keeping the consumer in the dark.
It really does. And to show you the real-world cost of being in the dark, the source gives us this story about a woman in Ohio named Linda.
It's such a classic example.
It is. Her situation is incredibly common. So for 11 years, Linda has been taking a standard thyroid medication, levothyroxine.
Right, very common drug.
Yeah. And every single month, for over a decade, she went to her local pharmacy and paid $68.
Which just feels like a completely routine errand, you know?
Yeah.
You drop off the script, you pay the fee, and you go home.
Right. Well, right up until last year, her daughter happened to be shopping at a Costco, and she just casually mentioned her mom's prescription to the pharmacist there.
Just making small talk, basically.
Yeah. And it turned out her mom could get the exact same medication. I mean, same dose, same manufacturer for $4.12.
Wow, that isn't just like a slight discount. That is a completely different financial reality.
It's insane. When you do the math on that difference over 11 years, Linda overpaid by roughly $8,000.
$8,000,
Yeah.
just gone.
$8,000. And the source makes this incredibly chilling assertion about Linda's situation. It says, nobody told her there was a cheaper option. Nobody was ever going to tell her.
No.
And that silence is not an accident.
No, it's really not. That deliberate silence is the core of what we are unpacking today. But before we get into the mechanisms behind it, I do want to establish our parameters for this deep dive.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Because our job today is not to give medical advice. We aren't discussing, switching medications or altering your treatment plans. That is strictly between you and your doctor.
Strictly financial today.
Exactly. What we are providing today is purely financial clarity. We want to figure out why the exact same pill sitting in the exact same plastic bottle can have 3 completely different prices depending on what you say to the person at the counter.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to truly protect yourself, you really have to understand the mechanics.
Right.
I want you to think about the pill bottles sitting in your own medicine cabinet right now. Ask yourself, what do they actually cost?
And not what you paid at the register.
Right, not what you paid, but what is the actual value of the medicine inside? Because if we don't understand why these massive price discrepancies exist, we'll just assume they're, random computer glitches.
And they absolutely are not glitches. I mean, it is systemic design.
Yeah.
To understand it, we have to start with a concept the industry calls the usual and customary price.
Which sounds very official.
It does, but it's basically the retail sticker price. It's the number they quote you at the pharmacy counter if you just walk up with no insurance whatsoever.
But the source explains that this number is essentially a fiction. Right. It's exactly like the price on the back of a hotel room door.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. You check into a standard room. You look at the evacuation map on the back of the door, and the sign says the maximum room rate is like $800 a night. Nobody actually pays that rate.
No one.
Except at the pharmacy, people actually do end up paying it.
They do. And they pay it because the actual price is manipulated by this incredibly opaque web of variables.
Right.
Your insurance plan design, your deductible status.
Right.
But the biggest variable of all is this invisible middleman called a pharmacy benefit manager, or a PBM.
Yeah, these PBMs seem to be the primary engineers of this entire pricing trap. Like, they pull all the strings.
They absolutely are. PBMs sit directly between your insurance company and your pharmacy.
Okay.
And their stated public purpose is to negotiate lower drug prices on behalf of the insurers. But here is the mechanism you really have to understand. PBMs take a cut of something called the spread.
The spread. Okay, explain that.
The spread is the difference between what they negotiate with the pharmacy behind the scenes and what you ultimately are charged at the counter.
Wait. I'm going to make sure I'm grasping the incentives here. If they take a cut of the spread, do that mean the middleman negotiating my supposed discount actually has a direct financial incentive to keep my out-of-pocket costs higher? Isn't that like a real estate agent trying to get you to pay above asking price just to juice their own commission?
That is exactly how the mechanism works. The wider the gap between the actual cost of the drug and what you pay, the more profit they make.
Are you serious?
Mm.
But how do they keep this a secret? Like, why wouldn't the pharmacist just lean over the counter and say, hey, your insurance is charging you $50, but this drug only costs $5. Just pay cash.
Because of a mechanism called a gag clause.
A gag clause.
Yeah. Under many private insurance contracts, pharmacists are legally prohibited from telling you that a cheaper cash option exists.
Unless you ask, right?
Exactly. Unless you specifically ask them for the cash price, their hands are tied.
That is wild to me. Why would any independent pharmacy agree to sign a contract that literally silences them from helping their own patients?
Because of market consolidation, just 3 PBM companies control roughly 80% of the market in the United States.
80%.
Yeah, they process almost every prescription filled in the country. If a pharmacy refuses to sign a contract with those PBMs because they object to the gag clause,
They just lose all those customers.
they lose access to 80% of their customer base. They would go out of business overnight, so they sign.
That feels like extortion.
It's tough. Now, federal law did ban these gag clauses for Medicare and Medicaid back in 2018, but they absolutely still exist in the world of private insurance.
So the pharmacist is just staring at their screen, seeing you overpay by $60 and legally cannot speak up. That is infuriating.
It's incredibly frustrating for them, too.
I bet.
Yeah.
But if the entire system is designed to hide cheaper options, where does this trap hurt people the most? The source points us directly toward daily maintenance medications.
Right. Medications for heart health, diabetes, thyroid issues, the things people have to take every single day for years.
Let's look at how this plays out in reality. We already talked about Linda's thyroid medication, levothyroxine. The retail price is $40 to $90 a month, but the actual discounted cash price is routinely under $5.
Yeah, under 5.
But the source also brings up atorvastatin, which is the generic version of Lipitor for cholesterol. At a standard retail pharmacy, a 30-day supply is usually priced between $45 and $90.
Right. Pretty standard retail markup.
But if you bypass insurance and use a discount app like GoodRx, it drops to between $4 and $12. And at Mark Cuban's Cost Plus Drugs, a 90-day supply is $3.
Which means if you are paying retail for atorvastatin, you are paying 10 to 30 times the actual value of the drug.
10 to 30 times. That is just, it's hard to wrap your head around. And then there is metformin, which is the most commonly prescribed type 2 diabetes medication in the world.
Millions of people take it.
Yeah, the retail price is $30 to $60 a month, but with a free GoodRx coupon, it's under $5. At Costco, it's as low as $3. The source runs the math on this. If you are paying $60 a month instead of $3 for a drug you take every day, that is nearly $14,000 in overpayments over 20 years.
$14,000 extracted from you for one single medication.
And we see the exact same dysfunction with blood pressure blockers.
Oh, absolutely. Medications like lisinopril, amlodipine, losartan, they all follow the same pattern.
Right. Lisinopril is highlighted as an extreme example here. The retail price can be up to $50 a month. But the actual cost, the discount price, is literally under $2.
It costs less than a cup of black coffee for a daily life-saving medication.
So what does this all mean? When you look at these maintenance drugs, it feels like an invisible subscription service.
That's a good way to frame it.
Like, if Netflix raised its price by $60 a month, you would cancel it instantly. You'd notice immediately. But because this charge is tied to our physical survival, and because it's put on auto refill, we just go totally blind to it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire industry is relying precisely on that set it and forget it mentality.
Oh, for sure.
When a prescription is on auto refill, the patient stops actively engaging with the transaction. They aren't shopping around anymore.
They're just picking up a bag and swiping a card.
Right. The system extracts maximum lifetime value from that patient simply because the friction of checking the price every single month feels like, well, way too much work.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because it's not just the convenience of auto refills that keeps people from asking questions.
No, it goes deeper than that.
It does. The source dives into how the system leverages the physical and psychological vulnerability of the patients themselves.
This is where the dry financial mechanics meet some very difficult human realities.
I want to ask you about this because the source points out massive price disparities in mental health and pain medications
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah, the data there is striking.
For example, sertraline, which is generic Zoloft, and acetalopram, which is generic Lexapro. These are incredibly common antidepressants.
Very common.
Retail prices regularly sit between $40 and well over $100. But the discount pricing brings both of them down to under $10 or $15.
It's a huge gap.
Why are these specific drugs targeted with such high markups? Are they just, like, much more expensive to manufacture?
Not at all. The manufacturing cost is incredibly low. What the system is effectively monetizing here is the stigma and the emotional weight associated with mental health.
Seriously. They price gouge based on stigma.
Pretty much. The industry knows that a patient picking up an antidepressant is often dealing with immense emotional friction.
Right, just getting out of bed might be hard enough.
Exactly. They are the least likely consumer to stand in line at a crowded, brightly lit pharmacy counter with people standing right behind them and demand a price check on their psychiatric medication.
They just want to pay, get out of there, and go home.
They do, and the system banks on that.
So it's a completely deliberate reliance on human exhaustion. That's dark. The source also brings up bupropion, generic Wellbutrin.
Right, which is used for depression, but people also use it as a short-term smoking cessation aid.
Oh, right. And the trap there is that people think, well, I'm only taking this for 3 months. I won't bother shopping around.
Exactly.
But even over just 3 months, failing to optimize the cost loses them over $100.
Because, again, the discount price is often under $15.
And then there's gabapentin. It's prescribed widely for nerve pain. The retail price for higher doses can exceed $120 a month.
Which is astronomical for a generic.
Right. But discount programs bring it down to $15 to $30.
Mm-hmm.
And the source specifically highlights who is taking gabapentin. It's often elderly patients on fixed incomes taking high doses for long durations.
It's a really vulnerable demographic.
Are they just banking on the fact that someone in severe nerve pain physically doesn't have the energy to haggle?
Yes. It acts as a pain tax.
A pain tax, wow.
It is incredibly difficult to advocate for your financial interests when you are in physical agony. The system knows this, and it maintains high profit margins by relying on the fact that sick people are just too tired to fight back.
A pain tax.
Right.
That is brutal. But the source points out that sometimes the trick isn't fighting over the price at the counter.
Right.
Sometimes the trap is that you shouldn't be at the pharmacy counter in the first place.
Which introduces us to the role of obscurity in drug pricing.
Let's look at omeprazole. You probably know it by the brand name Prilosec. It treats acid reflux. It is one of the highest volume prescriptions in America.
Extremely common.
But there's a huge twist here. The over-the-counter version, sitting out in the antacid aisle at your regular grocery store, is frequently drastically cheaper than the exact same prescription dose handed to you behind the pharmacy counter.
It is the exact same molecule. Literally no difference.
Wait, so if I have an official prescription for omeprazole written by my doctor,
Yeah.
I should literally ignore the pharmacist, walk away from the counter, and go buy it in the grocery aisle?
You absolutely should.
That feels so counterintuitive. It feels like I'm breaking a medical rule or something.
You aren't breaking a rule. You are just bypassing a trapped market.
Okay, how so?
Well, once a drug is handed to you over the prescription counter, it is subject to the PBM spread, the insurance deductibles, the dispensing fees, all of it.
Oh, all the invisible hands taking cut.
Right. When you buy it in the aisle, it's just standard retail. The source notes this works for other medications in that class too, like pantoprazole.
Right, pantoprazole is also highlighted. It's the same class of drug with the exact same pricing dynamic, but it is far less recognizable by name than Prilosec.
And because of that obscurity, patients are far less likely to question the cost.
They don't know the drug, so they just assume the high price the pharmacist tells them must be correct.
Exactly. Ignorance is monetized at every single step of this process.
Okay, so we now understand the mechanisms. We see the usual and customary illusion, the PBM spread, the gag clauses, the pain tax. We know where the traps are laid.
We've mapped the minefield.
Right. Now we need to talk about how to actually navigate this. How do we bypass the system? The source provides 5 highly actionable strategies.
And this is where we need to look closely at the mechanics of these solutions, because understanding how they bypass the PBMs is what actually changes the outcome of your next pharmacy visit.
Let's start with GoodRx, which is probably the most immediate countermeasure. The source breaks down a real-world example from Columbus, Ohio.
That was a great example.
Yeah, a patient went to a CVS to get atorvastatin, and the retail price was $72. Instead of handing over their insurance card, they pulled up the GoodRx app, typed in the drug and their zip code, and showed the screen to the pharmacist.
And the price just dropped.
Instantly.
Yeah.
It dropped from $72 to $9.14. How does an app do that instantly?
So GoodRx essentially functions as a massive aggregator of cash discount codes.
Okay.
It bypasses your specific insurance plan's negotiated rate and the massive PBM spread attached to it, and instead accesses pre-negotiated wholesale rates.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you are essentially stepping outside of your insurance ecosystem entirely for that specific transaction.
So same counter, same pill, just a different piece of digital plastic.
Mm-hmm.
The second strategy the source explores is Mark Cuban's company, Cost Plus Drugs. This operates on a completely different model than a local pharmacy, right?
It does. Their model completely eliminates the traditional PBM.
So no middleman at all.
Exactly. Cost Plus Drugs sources the medications directly from the manufacturers. They add a flat 15% markup for their profit, a small dispensing fee, and they ship it directly to your door.
And everyone sees the mass.
Right. The pricing is entirely transparent because the invisible middleman isn't there to take a cut of the spread.
Which makes it perfect for those daily maintenance medications like the metformin or the lisinopril we discussed earlier. If you know you're going to take it every day, mail order transparency makes total sense.
It really does.
Strategy number 3 brings us to Costco Pharmacy. The source is very explicit about this.
Mm-hmm.
You do not need a Costco membership to use their pharmacy.
A lot of people don't realize that, but federal law actually requires warehouse clubs to allow non-members access to their pharmacy services.
That is such a good tip, and their generic pricing is consistently among the lowest in the country. The source recommends making a simple phone call, right?
Yes, before you go anywhere.
Call them. Give them the name and dose of your drug, and ask for the cash price before you even attempt to run your insurance anywhere else. It establishes a baseline reality.
It gives you the actual value of the drug before the PBM inflates it.
Strategy 4 is about leveraging economies of scale. If you are on a stable maintenance medication, call your doctor and ask them to write the script for 90 days instead of a 30-day supply.
This is such a simple fix.
Right. Most discount programs and mail-order pharmacies offer much better per-unit rates when you buy in bulk. That one single phone call can cut your annual medication costs by 15 to 25%.
Because you are reducing the number of dispensing fees you pay throughout the year. Every fill has a fee.
And finally, strategy 5 involves doctor samples. This one surprised me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Pharmaceutical companies supply doctors with sample packs, especially for newer or more expensive brand-name drugs. The source says if your doctor prescribes something costly, you should immediately ask for samples.
The mechanism here is really about buying time.
Okay, how so?
A sample pack gives you 4 to 8 weeks of medication for free. That breaks the urgency.
Oh, so you don't have to rush to the pharmacy that same day.
Exactly. It gives you a runway to research these affordable supply routes. You can check Cost Plus, check GoodRx, without getting locked into a terrible, expensive refill cycle on day one.
That makes a lot of sense. I do have a very practical question about executing all of this at the local level, though.
Sure.
If I walk up to the pharmacy counter and I say, hey, I'm not using my insurance today, I want to use this GoodRx code, does the pharmacist get mad? Am I making their life harder by interrupting their workflow?
What's fascinating here is that very often the pharmacist is actually relieved.
Really? They don't mind.
No, remember the gag clause we talked about?
Yeah.
The pharmacist frequently knows you are being overcharged. They know a chipper code exists in their system, but their contract dictates they cannot suggest it to you.
Right. They're legally silenced.
But when you are the one who brings the discount code to them, you lift that contractual restriction, you initiate the alternate pathway. None of these strategies require getting into an argument with the person behind the counter.
You're just giving them permission to help you.
Precisely. It simply requires you knowing that the options exist.
And that wraps up our mission for today's deep dive. We've seen how the entire system profits immensely from obscurity and our lack of financial clarity.
But today, that ignorance ends.
It really does.
Think back to Linda. Her daughter saved her $8,000 just by casually asking a question at a Costco counter. I want you to think about your own circle. Who in your life is currently on autopilot with their prescriptions?
Probably a lot of people.
Yeah. Who is unknowingly paying the pain tax or trapped by a maintenance medication? Who can you share this information with today?
It's so important to pass this on. We've seen how this system functions essentially as a tax on our attention. It is a tax on our assumption that major healthcare institutions have our best financial interests at heart.
And they clearly don't.
Right. And understanding these mechanics really makes you wonder. If an industry as highly regulated as healthcare relies entirely on our autopilot to quietly extract billions in profit, what other areas of our financial lives are charging us a convenience fee for our ignorance?
That's a great question.
Where else are we just accepting the printed price tag on the gallon of milk, completely unaware that we are actually paying the hotel door price simply because we haven't thought to ask?